this is Tanner Holtum on Instagram, and me and him have already known each other for 2 years. So I met him through a computer science class where we were learning Python, and I sat next to him and I just said, "Hey, how are you doing? What do you do?" And he mentioned photography. So of course I was like, "Oh, I'm into that too." And I actually shared with him that I'm the owner of Bleach Film Photography on Instagram, and he has heard of it before we met. He'd already heard of it. So I took an interest in him and asked him why he got into photography and stuff. And now he's become a professional photographer. He is paid for his work, and I'm sure a lot of you want to know how he's been able to do this and actually fund his whole Mark II camera since he bought it, which was like, how long ago?
It was Black Friday of last year.
Okay, so it hasn't been a full year yet, and he's already paid it off, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So we have some interview questions for you, Tanner.
All right.
And I wanted you to briefly tell us your story, walk us through your story and how you got started and where you are today with your photography.
Sure. So I didn't start out actually trying to be a photographer, really. My best friend in high school bought a camera, and I just was at his house all the time, so I was just able to try it out, and otherwise I probably never would have tried a DSLR.
So it's actually your friend who got you into photography and convinced you to get started on it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Same for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had a Canon T5, which is just like an entry level, like $300 camera with a kit lens. It was like a f3.5, and whatever the kit lens is, like I can't think of the. It's like 24 to 55 or something like that, millimeter lens. So it didn't have the best like bokeh or anything like that, but it was enough to where I could start to see how different the images were compared to like using a cell phone or something like that.
Yeah.
So I started out just using portrait mode for the most part, because I thought that looked the coolest, and I was kind of into taking portraits in general. Just I would go out with my friends and take pictures of them, and then my friend would take pictures of me. So that's kind of how I started, and then I ended up buying that camera from my friend because he never used it, and we.
And what year was this?
That was freshman year of college. So.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I was actually into photography before I came to college, and my friends got me into it, but then it was actually because of my friend that I stopped. And that was my sophomore year of high school. So I was already doing 365 projects and stuff like that. But then my friend said, "You know what, your photos aren't so good." And I had just done a model shoot with her, so like that kind of crushed me. Whenever I had just edited her photos and she's like, "No, they suck." So I decided I'm gonna quit, and that's what led to me starting Bleach Film.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. I've definitely, like, I feel like I used to not take the best photos, but nobody ever like was like, "You suck." So I don't know. It definitely helped that like my friends were encouraging and always like, "Yeah, just stay at it, and eventually you'll get better."
And you're a junior now in college, right? So it's been 3 years of photography. So that's where you started, and where did you go after that? What happened?
So once I got to college, I just had access to so many more people. I come from a town of like population of like 15,000 people.
Where did you grow up?
In Crawfordsville, Indiana.
Crawfordsville.
So that's like northwest of Bloomington.
And I grew up in Crawford County.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that it sounds so similar, but it's completely different places.
Yeah. So it's kind of a farmlandy area, small town and everything. So there weren't a ton of people in like the art scene or anything like that that I ran into. But once I got to Bloomington, there were tons of people trying to model, tons of people into photography and videography, and there were professionals obviously around here, and instructors and stuff like that. So it didn't take long for me to really like find the community through Instagram, and start kind of connecting with people. I just started reaching out to.
Man, I wish I had done that, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I was like kind of scared of the photography community at that time. Because like I said, I stopped, you know.
Just with, yeah.
And I came through into college with like 200,000 followers with photography, in the photography niche. So I didn't know like how to go up to another photographer and be like, how's it going at the time? Because I don't know, I was just like scared of it, I think. But that's why I'm starting this. I want to like take your secrets as a professional photographer and share them with people who aren't yet. And I think that's gonna help a lot of people to get to where they want to be, you know?
Definitely.
So keep going with your story. How did you get started? You got started just by getting involved with the community around town.
Yeah.
And at what point was it like did you ever go through a moment where you almost quit?
Yeah, I would say I definitely had like some times where I was doubting my own abilities and kind of had imposter syndrome and stuff like that, thinking that, oh, maybe my work isn't good enough to work with certain models, or like to approach businesses and ask them if they want me to do work for them.
And when was that?
That was probably, I'd say I really like was going through that sophomore year, trying to kind of figure out
when I met you.
Yeah, trying
That's
to figure out like how valuable my skills were, I guess, at the time, and like kind of my positioning in the market. But I think I had the same thing. I was nervous to approach models and photographers and to collaborate, like super nervous. And I would get anxiety before shoots. Like I knew I was gonna meet a new person and be, it's a really intimate kind of interaction that you have where you're just kind of alone with a stranger for like an hour or so. But I really got over that by just shooting with friends. I got to the point where I thought my skill was good enough to like count for something. And then once I would meet up with strangers, I wasn't worried about, oh, are these photos going to turn out or not? Because
you knew they would.
Yeah, I knew they would at least be pretty solid.
So it took 2 years for you to be confident in your work.
I would say, yeah, like fully confident.
Now we're on year 3. So what's changed in the past year? And where are you at now?
Yeah, in the past year, I've definitely started like getting more paid work and like put more value on myself. I did a lot of like free shoots with people starting out, and I still do like collaborations and stuff like that. But I was desperate for people to even take photos of at first, so I had to do some free shoots, and I think that's definitely something that most photographers have to do starting out. But once you have a somewhat of a portfolio put in place where people can see the quality of your work and kind of attach a value to it, I had to at least like incrementally increase the price until I felt like I was at a good spot where the price matched the value I was providing.
So I remember like maybe a year ago, I came over and talked to you, and what you were doing at the time was kind of listing your services on Craigslist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how did that push you into the next phase of your photography?
Yeah, I've used every source that I can to put my name out there, basically, or I tried to. I'm sure I've missed some, but with like being at IU, I use IU classifieds to kind of tap into the student market and
local marketplaces.
Yeah, local marketplaces, definitely good. I've never done like a newspaper ad or anything like that, just because I feel like young people don't really read the newspaper that much.
True.
But definitely IU classifieds, Craigslist. Facebook, I created like a page for my work, obviously, that's kind of a more obvious one. But once I started putting that out there, I would associate a price range with a certain type of shoot. So I kind of started specializing in portraiture like early on.
So what did you charge when you first started?
First starting out, I would say like I wouldn't charge more than $50
for a final edited photos and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which would take like 2 to 3 hours at least, right?
The editing process, yeah. And I made the mistake early on of like, I would just give them like 100 images. I wouldn't really go through and cull my images. I would take like 300 on the shoot, just, snap, especially early on when I didn't know exactly what looks I was going for. I would snap a lot, and then it would take me forever to go through it all. And then I would just edit way too many and not really pick out the best ones. And I was just making myself do more work than I needed to for less money than it was worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you should be doing then is deleting the bad photos and only editing the great ones that you think that they would like.
Yeah, I would say like, even now I'll provide like 30 images from like an hour-long shoot, but I know of other photographers that charge more and give their clients like 10 images, like 10 final images. So it's kind of up to you, like what you want to do, but I like to give it at least a little bit of a range so they can pick the kind of poses and stuff that they like the best.
So then what do you charge today now that you're more like 3 years later after you're starting?
So right now, it really depends on what type of shoot it is. And
per hour then?
Yeah, per hour, I would say like 150 out of like a base price. Just because if it's a big client and I know that they have the budget and I know that they are gonna want the highest quality work, then it'll be higher than that. But for some, like just an individual, maybe they want like grad photos or something quick, maybe just portraiture for their personal brand or something like that. I try to stick with 150 because I feel like if you price too low, people are gonna think that you're not even, like your photos aren't worth that much, just in quality alone. But 150 seems like a fair area where people are willing to, I don't get that many no's with 150.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's probably because they know that you're good and that you've been doing this for a while now.
I hope so. that is the hope.
It's knowing your worth, and at that point, when you know how good you are, you can start to charge more, So that's why I recommend beginner photographers on YouTube always start for free and just do any gig possible that you can get. That way you get some experience under your belt, and then you can start charging once you're really good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question I have for you is, how do you go about creating a concept and bringing it to life in your photography?
That's definitely something I've learned a lot about this last semester of school, actually.
In your classes?
Yeah, in my class. I took an advanced photography course this last semester, and that was something, I came out like my first project with just portraits, because that's what I like, just good looking images. But my professor just kind of ripped me apart.
He tore you up?
Yeah, because he's like, "What? These aren't saying anything. There's not an interest really to it. It's just a good-looking image of a person." So, and I mean that's great. Like you should be able to do that for people. That's valuable. But if you want work that's just kind of standalone work, like I'm a photographer and this is my interesting work, there has to be more of a message or a story behind it, or some sort of something that makes it different than just a portrait, because I mean there's just so many portrait photographers out there.
Everybody can do a portrait.
Exactly.
There's portrait mode on iPhone today, so.
Yeah, so you have to do something to distinguish it and make people spend more than the 3 seconds of, they see your image and they swipe on. So you want people to spend time with your work, I think.
So what did you learn in your class that kind of helped you to bring that story out in the concept in your photography?
So I guess what I learned is just the easiest way to do it, rather than looking for inspiration from other photographers and stuff like that, the easiest way is just to take things that you're going through in life or other extraneous interests that you have outside of photography, maybe music or literature or whatever, and use those as inspiration, and just things that you're thinking about in your day-to-day life. Kind of take that mood and kind of sculpt that into some sort of scene. And I think that's a really easy way to create a unique image.
So about maybe like a week ago, me and Tanner ran into each other, and he told me something interesting about how he changed his style of shooting recently, which was before you were kind of posting photo and taking photos in the lens of Instagram. And then you realized that was limiting yourself. Can you tell them a little bit about what went through your mind throughout that process and how you changed?
Yeah, that was something, I had to take like a 290 course first semester of junior year in order to get to the advanced one. And that was like a film-based class, which was cool because I hadn't shot film before. But my first project, the same way, I did portraits, like a lot of portraits for that project. And the number one critique I got from all of my images was that all my subjects were dead center in the frame. And I realized that that was something just from watching like YouTube videos about Instagram strategy and stuff like that. That was something that had kind of gotten beat into my brain, was like, you need to have centralized like subject matter so your feed looks right, you know, you can kind of see the main focus of the image right in your feed, and it just looks pleasing on the feed when you're scrolling as well. So I was just subconsciously framing everything right in the center, and it made all my stuff look the same kind of. So that was one thing. And then other than that, just there's just certain trends on Instagram and certain types of fashion styles that are popular, certain color edits and stuff like that. And I think like me just really studying it and trying to get better at that put me in a Instagram mindset for creating images instead of just like a photography mindset, and just trying to make really well composed, clean images.
And now you do it differently.
Yeah, so I haven't really done it, like I don't have like a secret to it really, but like I've just been more experimental and just trying as different
many angles, going to the spot behind you instead of like directly in front of you, stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So just trying new things and finding out what works, and trying to create something a little different than everybody else.
All right, so the next question I have for you is, how do you store photos on your hard drive?
Okay, so the way that I do it right now is I will have, as soon as the shoot's done, I try to like put my SD card in my camera or in my computer. As soon as I get home, drag all the files off just so there's no weirdness that happens where like my card gets corrupted and I lose those, or I mean, I've never had that happen, but I'm really paranoid about that.
There's stories about that happening.
Yeah. So I just get them off immediately, and I leave them on the card usually until I'm done editing, just in case like I accidentally were to delete them or something. So I'll throw them on there and then I import them into Lightroom, and then I'll go and edit all of them, and then I export as JPEGs. So I'm shooting in RAW, so I have all the RAWs in like the first folder, and then I'll create a new folder with all JPEGs. And so then I have two, and usually what I'll do, just because the RAWs take up so much room on my hard drive, is I'll keep them around for like a month after the shoot. If it was like a big shoot where like it was a client that paid a good amount of money or something like that. And that way, if they have any requests and they're like, hey, could you possibly like re-edit this photo a little bit different? Or like, maybe I'll send them a black and white and they're like, I really love this image, but I wish it was in color. You just have that flexibility still, and you can just make their experience with you better. So,
So something I do is I just go through and delete them. But that's not something you should do, just in case, like if you have a paying client and they want to edit it differently, make sure that you have it saved back there, just in case.
Right.
And do you have like an external hard drive that you push them onto, or do you keep them on your desktop?
Yes, I do. They're not backed up right now. I probably backed up like a couple months ago or 3 months ago, and I've taken thousands of photos since then. So it's kind of risky. I'm just lazy about it, I guess.
You just remind yourself every few months, like, you gotta do that.
Yeah, so it's definitely, it's ideal. Like I would always be updating onto that, and or even just have one like always hooked up to my computer where I could do a backup.
So then in terms of like naming the files so that you keep them organized? Do you put the date on it, or do you put the name of the client, or like how do you name your files to keep those all sorted out?
Yeah, I don't name individual photos at all, but I'll label the folders. I'll usually do the name of the person, just so I can always like, especially if it's someone that I only meet like one time or something, I can remember and search them up or something if I need to get in contact with them. And then I'll put some description about where we are, like nighttime, downtown shoot or something like that.
Okay.
Just because sometimes, I mean, pretty often I'll shoot with like the same people, some of my close friends and some of the models that I work with frequently. And I don't want just one folder where it's like, you know, X name and it's just all the shoots all just thrown into one thing. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you all know, these questions that I got, some of them are mine, but actually some of the questions I posted on my story yesterday, and I put up a poll so that you all can send in your questions. So in the future, if you see me asking questions on there, make sure you ask me a question so that I can ask the next photographer that I'm interviewing. But the next question that I have is, this was submitted by someone on Instagram, what is your go-to starter lens as a beginner, for beginners?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of like everybody's answer, or I've heard a lot of photographers say this, but I would say the 50mm 1.8 is, I recommend that to everyone just because...
That's the lens that I have.
Yeah.
No, I have the 35mm lens.
Oh, okay.
1.8, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good too. And even 35 1.8 can be better if you have a crop sensor, because then it's like close to 50 when you have it on a crop. But I like the 50. That's what I started out with, like after the kit lens. It's like 125 brand new, and it's a Canon lens. So, well, I guess if you're shooting Canon, but the Canon one for me was perfectly sharp, really fast autofocus, and it just gives you the look that you're going for most, like, or the look that people think is professional. Yeah. With the blurry background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
With the bokeh in that photo. Okay, so the next question is, so tell us your story about how you became a professional and started to be paid as a photographer.
Okay. Yeah, that was something, like I said earlier, like had to get over the initial like imposter syndrome and like kind of the idea that I didn't know how much I could charge.
That's what I've been feeling. This whole time I've been like, I feel like a fake, you know, because I haven't been practicing my photography. So I've been feeling imposter syndrome as the owner of Bleach Film, which is like kind of weird, you know,
yeah.
But that's how I've been feeling. So now I'm gonna start getting into it again and start, like, you all are gonna see my photography journey as I go through and start taking more photos and start getting better. But you're on the spotlight, bro. Your turn.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I just started out, like, if someone in my hometown, like in Crawfordsville when I was in high school, if someone contacted me for a shoot, that's when I would charge. If I was contacting other people, like just individuals, I wouldn't be like, hey, do you want to have a photo shoot? It's $100.
Okay.
So I would, if people were to contact me, I knew that they valued my work and I felt like it was okay to charge. So that's kind of how I started initially, and then
like doing senior portraits, stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then as I started to become more confident and I had done more types of shoots in different like settings and nature and urban and stuff like that, I felt confident to the point where I could just kind of walk around with a person and have a good shoot pretty much every time. So at that point, I knew that I could at least come off as somewhat professional, even if you know, kind of the interaction wasn't perfect or something. You know, that was something I definitely stressed about at first, was
how your social interaction was.
Yeah, like I mean, it was always fine, but like just the idea that, you know, maybe the model feels uncomfortable, like just because like there's not enough conversation going on or something like that. So that was something that I just had to like become comfortable with myself. And once I was really comfortable with it, it just like naturally the shoot went really smoothly for the most
Okay.
part. But yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. And then lately, I've been working. I got a job through Craigslist actually, just searching up people looking for photographers, which is something I recommend. I don't do it enough, honestly, but I recommend like everybody in your area to just check on Craigslist and similar sites like pretty frequently, because people
They'll
are
post
looking
jobs
for it.
and then you apply for it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say yes or no based on how many people entered.
Yeah, and some of them, you know, it's just like an individual that doesn't know any good photographers, and they're just kind of like scouting their area for good ones. And you might be the only one that contacts them, so it's always worth sending out an
You
email.
probably were, because
Yeah.
nobody's on Craigslist
Yeah.
anymore,
Okay.
unless they're doing sketchy stuff.
That's actually true. Yeah, you got to be careful of who you talk to on Craigslist.
Uh-huh.
Some weird interactions, but
So I told everybody earlier through my vlog before on the way over here that you are actually shooting for Uber Eats.
yeah.
Do you think you can let us in on that secret?
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I can say like what agency it is, just
Mhm.
because like the contract I signed at the beginning, but basically like I got this job through Craigslist. They were looking for photographers in Bloomington, Indiana, and I just sent them an email saying I was interested, and they got back to me the same day. And this agency just creates content for different apps, so they're making like they'll just have you go to a restaurant, and for Uber Eats just shoot like 5 menu items. It's completely independent, completely through the internet, and
That sounds like a cool gig.
yeah, you just it's really nice because I don't have to go through anyone really. I just get the job, I go do it, and submit the images.
So you're starting to work more independently now, and you still work at Hewitt's, correct?
yes, yeah. Which is, I guess for people that don't know, it's like I use technology department because I'm actually an informatics major.
Yeah, we're both informatics majors.
Yeah.
And I'm an informatics degree now.
Right.
So
Yeah, you're done.
yeah, so that feels good. But yeah, I actually recommended to him, hey, I mean, think about it. Like, you're sitting here for a whole day of your life just to make what, like $200, you know? And this was about a year ago
in
that I
2
told
weeks.
him.
202 weeks.
2 weeks. It takes, well, it's a whole day of your life after 2 weeks of work.
Okay.
Because you work so many days, but it's really 24 hours,
Right.
and then you make $200. And I was like, man, like, think about it. If you really focus on photography, you won't be limited by that. You get to charge your own price, and you can make so much more money from doing less. So I recommended that to him, and it's been about a year since. He still hasn't quit Hewitt's, but I think it's getting closer to that time.
Yeah, definitely. It's just getting to the point where like, yeah, the 24-hour thing, like, it's hard to justify working that many hours for that low of a rate when I could spend one weekend working just 8 hours. You know, you could shoot a wedding in 8 hours on a Saturday and maybe make like
$1,000
yeah,
from weddings
or more.
Yeah.
Or more. So
How many weddings have you shot?
I haven't shot any,
Yeah.
but
Are you about to get into weddings, or do you not want to do that?
not really. That's not really my
Forte?
yeah, it's not my forte. It's not something that I find like really artistically engaging.
Oh, okay.
Just because it's like it's always the same subject matter, pretty
Mhm.
much, you know. So everyone has done it.
Well, the photos would probably turn out beautiful though,
Yeah.
because they have it all set up, the whole venue.
Mhm.
Yeah. That makes your job easy.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely something that you should do if you're trying to make money with photo.
Has it been a smooth road? And if not, what were your struggles along the way of becoming a professional photographer?
Yeah. I would say it has not been a smooth road. There's been a lot of different struggles I've gone through, and just learning experiences and stuff like that. A main one for me was just getting clients at the beginning, which I think I've kind of mentioned before, but just having enough of a reputation in my area to be able to come off as professional and being able to reach out to people. I don't think it's all about the follower count per se, but at least having enough content up to where people
It's your
can tell.
network.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's bigger? It's not like a follower count, but who you know
Mm-hmm.
to get connected.
Definitely.
So that you use that to your advantage, and Instagram's a great way to build your network.
Yeah.
And what other struggles did you have?
A big one was with editing. So like, I use Lightroom for pretty much all my stuff. I don't really use Photoshop unless like I need to do some touch-ups or I do like skin correction, stuff like that. But with Lightroom, something that I was messing up on early on, when I look back at my stuff, it is kind of looks terrible to me now, is like my skin tones. Like,
Oh, okay.
I would be editing the photo, changing the hues and luminance and stuff like that of especially when you get around like the oranges and the yellows. And you know, I was trying to come up with these really cool edits, like maybe like if I was in the fall time and there were still green leaves on the trees, I would do an edit where I would turn all the green yellow and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And when you start messing with the hue and stuff, it is gonna affect the skin tone. And so I was so caught up, I had to, you know, I would get in the zone and be editing a lot of photos and like I'd find one color combo that I really liked, but I wasn't thinking about how that was affecting the model. And a lot of times it just came up with like really unnatural looking.
So then how do you fix that? How do you not let that happen as you're editing different, like the color range?
I've just become a lot more particular and a lot more cautious with how I edit. So instead of taking it super far and like saturating stuff, like if I want a blue to pop, I used to like just crank it, you know, like throw it on like 80 plus 80 saturation or something like that. But now like if I want something to stand out, because it's all relative, all the colors are relative. So if you want something to stand out, maybe bump it like 10 to 15 at the most, and that way you're kind of staying within a natural range, but you're able to still like get
So
colors
then do
popping.
you bump the other colors back like 10 to 15 or
Yeah,
at the same time to make it pop?
sometimes it just
Okay.
depends, but yeah, there's definitely like, there's kind of like a it's still kind of in, it's like the desaturated look. So yeah, so some photographers are really into saturated looks and then some are all desaturated. So I've kind of had to learn that, you know, more contrast, more saturation, it's not always for the best, I would say. And also like something I used to do is bump my sharpness a lot and bump my clarity.
I do that.
Because I mean it makes your photo pop off the screen more. But at the same time, it kind of makes people's skin look a little bit rough, a little less, a little less soft.
Okay.
So in the same way, like softness isn't always bad. You can use it stylistically and like it'll be a good thing sometimes.
So in terms of your photography gear, did you ever have struggles with, you know, taking the best photos with your old camera before you got this new one?
Definitely, yeah. I definitely felt limited just because I watch a lot of YouTube, and especially early on, just to learn how photographers go about their day, like on a shoot or something like that, or how they plan, and how they're making money. And you know, I would study all that stuff. And something I always saw was these big photographers with a huge following shooting on $4,000 like Sony A7R3s or whatever.
Yeah,
and
that's the most popular camera right now.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest ones, and like you can create beautiful images and beautiful video with that. And I started to get caught up thinking, oh, I need to start saving right now for the best camera, which obviously eventually, yeah, you should upgrade your gear, but you can make, I would have that T5, I paid my friend like $250 for the T5 and the kit lens and like a tripod, and I was making money from that camera. I made way more than that for the, you know, from that camera. And
So it pays itself off.
it does, definitely. It always will. And as long as you're willing to seek out the work, I would say. So don't feel.
So what do you want to tell those beginners who are like, I'm sitting here with just my T5 and I can't do a paid shoot with this because it's not going to turn out great?
You just need to have confidence in yourself, I would say, is the first thing. And confidence in your ability that, you know, when you go out on your own or when you go out with friends, you're taking good images regardless of what the camera is. And it doesn't, something I was thinking early on is like, I need a big camera with a big lens so people see me and they're like, oh, that's a professional photographer. But really you don't need that. You just need a DSLR that you can throw a nifty 50 lens on. And
that's making me think of the video with the rifle, and he's got it with the camera lens. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah.
The viral video?
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, he rigged his big zoom lens onto a gun, and he's like pulling it out, actually shooting. So it looks, because people always say, oh, you shoot me with your camera.
Yeah.
And this guy has a legit gun like rigged up with his big lens to make it easier to carry. So I thought that was pretty funny. All right, on to the next question. So tell us about your photography. What do you specialize in, and what are you known for? What sets you apart from others in the same area?
My specialty is definitely portraits, especially like to the public. I would say it's portraits just because that's what I post, and I feel that's like the main source of what people want, is they want you to be able to take really good pictures of people. And I just find it the most interesting, because if I go to like an Uber shoot and I'm just by myself with like a plate of food, you know, and obviously like you can get really creative with it because the food doesn't get uncomfortable. But you know, there's something really special about every person that you meet being unique and kind of showing their personality through the portraits. And I think that like every shoot is always a surprise, and it's just great. Like I've met so many people that I would never have the guts to just like walk up to and talk to, just because like we're just doing a shoot.
So like when you're on that photography, when you first meet someone who you've never met, what's the first thing you do to make them feel comfortable on that shoot?
Typically I'll just try to come in with a really positive attitude. I think that's the main thing. If you're kind of low energy, like just like like kind of, if you come off as uncomfortable, they're going to be uncomfortable. So even if you are uncomfortable, make your best effort.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Make your best effort, and people will respond to that, I would say.
Oh, okay.
So, and I try to ask them a little bit about themselves just to get them talking more. And once people are talking to you a bit, I think they usually loosen up quite a bit, especially for in front of the camera. Like you don't want them like super rigid and looking super posed for portraits. So I always try to just start a conversation of some sort.
Do you do candid shots with your models, or do you usually do only like, all right, they're staring at the camera, or what do you normally do?
It's usually it's kind of like an in-between thing. So I'm not like super big on direction unless I have a really specific concept in mind.
So you like to let them figure out like what the best pose is, or do you be like, all right, move your arm a little bit?
Yeah, I will do that once they get into a look that I like. Or I mean, I'm just kind of shooting away as they're going, but I try to just keep it very loose and fun. Maybe have music playing on the shoot.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, because the dead silence that happens sometimes when you're focused on your settings and you're looking, the model doesn't know what's going on, and that can get weird for them.
And I also think that movement is huge. So you're like taking advantage of movement in the photos and stuff, and having people move around a lot makes the images pop more.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a girl and they have their hair like hair flips, for example. So having music in the background will convince them, oh, maybe I'll like do a little dance, and then the photos turn out great because they were moving so much and comfortable.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's something like, as I've worked my way up and like worked with girls with modeling experience, well, guys and girls obviously, but it's just so easy for them to switch around, do different poses, do little change ups, and then once they're into a pose that I think looks really good, I'll just say like, hey, hold that for a second, I'm gonna get some angles of that so we get the best look. But for the most part, I just let them kind of be free to do whatever they want, and just kind of photograph it that way.
Okay. So one more question. What if a model is super like uncomfortable with modeling? What do you do to make them more comfortable with their selves?
Yeah, so that happens less with like working with models that have experience. More so like I've done some like senior shoots and stuff like that where they've probably maybe never gotten their picture, like had a shoot with like a DSLR and stuff like that. So it's definitely weird for some people. And I think the best thing is to just be constantly communicating with them, constantly saying, like, if you take a break and you're looking at the camera, they're like, oh, is this good? Is this bad?
Yeah.
So I'll just say, oh, that looks great.
Encourage them.
And I'll let them know, like, if I'm changing my settings, I'll say, hey, I'm just gonna change a couple settings real quick, just so they're not like standing there like, what's going on?
Yeah. Because then they're like, oh, did I mess it up?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I probably don't look so good. When in reality, they look fine.
And also, I'll show them, usually right at the beginning.
Oh yeah, people love to look at the photo before it's delivered to them.
Yeah, so I'll usually, like, after we are at the first location and I get a few that I really like, I'll just turn the camera around and be like, hey, this is what they look like. And then when they see that they look good in the image,
that gives them some confidence.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so what were you like growing up, personality-wise, interest-wise, etc.?
Okay, I would say I was kind of like I was in like honors classes, like from like 3rd grade on. So I kind of always like I was kind of like in like the nerd group, I would say, in school. And I was pretty into like video games and stuff like that. I wouldn't really say I was like antisocial or anything, but I was really into computers. So I would get on and game with my friends online and work on building computers and just.
Yeah, I feel like that's where we have a personal connection too. Well, not only with photography, but also with technology too. Because we found each other in informatics, and I was always into technology. I was one of those kids who was like sitting alone at the computer, growing up a lot, you know.
Yeah, and I definitely did that. I still like. I'd say I was more like, I wasn't like the guy that was like always trying to go out to like parties and like meet up with people, but like I had like a close group of friends that I like to hang with, and that's kind of, I'd say that's
and
kind of.
And what were you interested in?
Interests, I would say music. I was really into music production. I still am. I make just music on the computer, and I play guitar. I used to play a lot more before I got into photo, and yeah, music heavily, and like listening to music, creating playlists, like following the newest releases,
downloading songs, organizing the albums. I did so much of that too. So yeah, I was super into music whenever I was growing up, and that's kind of like why I put music onto my Instagram account. So I started like doing those videos that I just showed you. Yeah. And I had a different music taste than most people. What were you into?
Some people are kind of surprised by this, but I mostly just listen to hip hop, like rap and stuff.
Oh, okay. So I was into like indie alternative, like Odessa, and I actually, something I pride myself in is that I knew The Weeknd before he was big. So like I was listening to his early albums like Kissland and stuff like that, and it was only because my friend had told me about him. And a lot of the music that I found, I actually, Instagram people online referred me to that music. So I'd be like, what kind of music would you all like to hear? Like, recommend some songs to me, and then I'd sit down and actually look them all up and listen to them.
That's cool.
That's how I got into finding new music, which I haven't done recently.
Yeah, me neither.
So the next question is a really good question. How do you personally stay motivated to keep going out there and kill it? Because I know that I constantly am striving to stay motivated. Even this morning whenever I wake up, it's like I felt demotivated almost every day. So how do you stay motivated?
I would say the main thing I do is have a relatively consistent schedule. Like, it's pretty hard with school, especially during the weeks. Like, it's hard to go through like 3 classes a day and then maybe have work and then feel like wanting to do a photo shoot after. You know, I'm kind of just drained I don't really feel like being creative. Whereas during the summer, like I feel, I just feel free to do whatever. I might hit up somebody in the middle of the day and just go out and do an impromptu shoot or something, just because I have so much time on my hands. But if you want to like stay consistent, what I've done is I just have a basic like. In the morning, I just always do the same thing. I basically like always eat the same food.
What is it? Walk us through.
So I'll wake up and immediately shower because that like just wakes me up. And then I'll have I've been eating I'll make bacon and eggs literally every day, and then
Me too. Today I had sausage and eggs.
Really?
I've been always consistent egg fan.
Yeah. It's just a nice like boost in the morning. And then.
Do you drink coffee?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not every day though.
No, I try to keep it to like 2 to 3 days a week, and I try to drink it like when I feel like I need it more. Like if I feel like less energetic that day, then maybe I'll drink coffee. But like I feel like if it was a daily thing, it would have less of an effect, and it wouldn't really matter that much.
Yeah, it does definitely. And there was a point in my life where I like relied upon coffee, but it was during Lent. A year ago that I gave up coffee for Lent. So like for 40 days, I completely couldn't drink coffee, and ever since then, I know I don't need it. I don't rely upon it. So I did drink some today, but it's not like I need it every morning. I'm not like, oh, I need to get my coffee,
Yeah. So I would just say like that stuff, obviously, but that's like not super. I don't know. That's not photo related,
No, it isn't. Let's just get back on track.
Yeah, having that schedule in the morning, really just starting your day without being lazy is huge, I think.
Oh yeah.
Like if you start slow, at least for me, like if I start slow.
What time do you wake up?
Like during the summer, I haven't really figured it out again yet, just because I've been on a schedule for so long. But I try to be up by like 10 at the latest. Like if I had a late night, like I'll try to be up by 10, just so like. I don't feel like I wasted half my day in the morning.
I know, that's my problem. Like, I wake up too late and then I don't get going quick enough.
Yeah.
So, what are your top three tips for young photographers?
Okay. All right, that's gonna take some thinking. I would say the first thing is that I think like when I was starting out, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be good like at a certain level. I was comparing myself to like big photographers, the most popular photographers, most successful photographers, and thinking I don't know if I can ever get to that level. But now I've gotten to a point where I don't think I'm at that level at all, but I think I've seen the progression, and I've seen how putting the time in has made me better.
Yeah.
And it's just consistently like I've improved because
you're practicing.
Yeah, because I'm practicing. So like it no longer feels like it's out of reach, like it's something that I'll never be able to achieve. It just feels like something that I just have to keep putting time into until I reach that.
Okay.
So I would say
don't give up.
Yeah, just don't give up, because you're going to keep getting better as long as you keep doing it. Another word of advice would just be don't put gear over skill. I would say I tried to wait as long as possible with my Canon T5 to where like.
And you just recently sold it.
Yeah, and I just tried to wait until I felt that I was genuinely being limited by that camera until I purchased a new one. And this is the first full frame camera I've had, and I felt like I needed that just because I wanted to start printing my work a little bit. And also just delivering higher quality to my clients. I felt like I felt more right about charging more if I was delivering a quality that other people couldn't.
I mean, it definitely is improved. Like it's a really good camera. So, do you have one more tip?
Yeah. Let me think. I guess it would probably be don't get stuck in a rut of just shooting one thing. Because that's something that I mostly shoot portraits, but recently, like with the Uber Eats thing, like I've never shot food before, but like I think that's what you have to do in order to keep it fun, because it's definitely it's like a business if you want it, if you want it to be, and it can become it can stop feeling fun because you're trying to make money with it and trying to sell yourself a little bit. So I would say just do little independent projects on your own, and
Like this, he just showed me a music video that he did with someone, a rapper, a local rapper, and it's really good. So you probably wouldn't have been as confident in your cinematography like a few years ago.
right.
And how did you get to that point with video editing?
That was, I'd say I learned the most about Adobe just from early classes. I took a couple like informatics, like not topics courses, but kind of like those classes you can take that are kind of like, you can take different creative classes that count for informatics general credits. And I took like a Photoshop one, and then I took one that had like After Effects, Premiere, and like Dreamweaver. We even did like some like artistic websites and stuff. But those classes really, and I mean, you can get those same classes like with like whatever, like Skillshare or like lynda.com
for free.
Yeah. So just going through something like that, learning the basics of, you don't need to learn like every individual, like, oh, this is a trendy whip pan, you know, something like that. Like, you can learn those things and it's nice to add to your skill set, but just learning the basics of actually manipulating your files in those programs and like understanding why you do certain things, that way you can like be a good critic of your own work. I think that's like the main thing.
Yeah, I've seen like crazy improvements since I met you, like sophomore year, and it's been 2 years since, and his photos blew me away today. So, and his video too.
Thank you.
So we have a few more questions. How has your perception of photography changed since you were a beginner?
Okay. I would say that kind of going back to one of the 3 tips, it's just something that, it's just like anything else. It's like learning math, you know, like there's almost this idea that I had early on where creative pursuits seemed like, so like, what if I run out of ideas, or like I'm not going to be able to think of really cool concepts. But as you keep going and as you keep just trying weird stuff, eventually you'll find your style, and you'll realize that there's more of you can be methodical about the whole process, and it's more like mechanical, like figuring it all out than some sort of abstract, like, oh, I'm some visionary that comes up with, you know, crazy ideas and stuff. It's more, anyone can do it if they practice enough, basically.
Okay. So you've realized that it's not impossible to get really good.
Yep.
Okay, so then the last question I have for you today is, what camera are you using to record this, and what editing programs do you use?
Sure. So this is the Canon 6D Mark II. I bought it on Black Friday because it's expensive and I'm a broke college student.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Discount.
right. Got a fat discount, and it does like 1080p video. That's what we're shooting on right now. So, and I feel like that's still fine. Like, some people are like, oh, why wouldn't you get 4K? It's 2019, like everything's 4K. But I feel like I just need to get the job done. I don't need to have the perfect quality. Exactly. So that's why I went with the 6D Mark II, and I was also just familiar with Canon already. So I felt like it was a good choice. But as far as my programs, I use all Adobe. So I'll use Bridge to actually look through the files on my SD card, because with a full frame, like, Windows can't read those files and preview them for you. Yeah. So I'll use Bridge just to see which like number files they are, and then I'll use that to be able to drag them onto my computer. And then I use Lightroom to color correct and like just kind of put on my edits, and then I'll export them. And sometimes, especially if it's like a high-paying client or something, or like it's grad photos where they have requested retouching, then I'll throw them into Photoshop and I'll do a basic like frequency separation retouching, which is like, I don't know, that's basically how everyone does it as far as I know. I think that's just the way to do it. And that's it. I'll use Premiere for video editing, and I've been wanting to get more into After Effects because it has cool like tracking and stuff like that you can do.
So do you think you can show the camera your Instagram account? right now
Yeah, sure.
and show them like who you are on Instagram?
So my name on Instagram is Tanner Haltom, and this is a little bit of my page. It's basically all portraits. I post some pictures of like animals too sometimes, but I do want to kind of get away from portraits a little bit. It's just hard with I don't know, kind of branding yourself. It's hard to do too many things on one page. So I've tried to keep it to mostly portraits, just to kind of keep the style consistent and stuff like that.
Okay, so this was the first of many Bleach Film photography spotlights. This is Tanner Haltom here. I did an interview to share a professional photographer's secrets to those creators who are just getting started. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, like and subscribe and check out our future videos on Bleach Film Photography YouTube and podcast. Thank you very much for watching.